All right, we're going to start looking at classes in Java today. You are familiar with classes a little bit because that's object-oriented programming, and we covered it in Python already, kind of a little bit, but in Java, it's much more, you use it much more than in Python. Python is mostly you're just writing definitions such as modules, methods, and then you use them. When in Java, you will write a whole class. You're going to create some objects. You're going to assign some methods to those objects, and then you're going to use those objects in your program. So we're just going to look at how to use them, how to write them. I will show you an example. We're going to write a class together in this lecture, and I'm going to show you how to use the methods for an object, how to create an object, how to create a class, and stuff like that. So first of all, let's do a little recap of what classes and objects are. So first of all, think of it as you're going to create a class, and that class will do a certain action for you. So kind of the same as methods in Python, but on a much bigger scale. And objects that we will create, they generally have only two things that they will do for you. The first one is either you're going to store some data within those objects, and it basically in simple language, you're just going to create some variables. Those objects are going to store certain variables for you, and those variables will store data. Or objects can also perform operations for you. What that means is an object will have certain methods assigned to it, and those methods will perform certain functions for you within your program. Now, we already covered all of these. We covered the scanner, we covered the random objects. If you have read the PowerPoints, you probably are familiar with the print writer objects. So scanner objects, a recap, we're going to read some input. If you want to read some input from the keyboard, you're going to create a scanner object. I showed you how to do that in a previous lecture. Now, the random object is the same as in Python when you want to create a random number generator. So random objects will just create random numbers for you. And the print writer object is, we use it when we want to write some data to a file. So let's see, what's the benefit of using objects and classes is that you can reuse your code over and over again. So once you create something, once you create a class, once you create an object, you can reuse that object over and over again. You do not have to create it over and over, write the new code over and over. So this is the benefit. You can reuse your code in the later programs. Now, class, what I just said, that is where the objects come from. So you will create a class. A class will just describe what an object is, what the object's variables are, what the object's methods are. But then after you want to use, basically think of it as a blueprint. So we are building a blueprint for the house, right? There is a blueprint, and then we build a house from that blueprint. So think of a class as the blueprint and think of an object as the actual house. Let's see. Here's an example of what we already covered. So scanner is the class. As you can see, it's capital letter. That's how you can specify or distinguish a class from everything else. It will be with a capital letter. So scanner is the class because see, it starts with a capital letter. Then new, the keyword new will just mean that you want to create a new object of that class. And then this keyboard, for example, right here, this is just a variable. This is just a name of a variable that you create as a programmer. You can use any kind of name for this variable, but typically you want to be able to distinguish what that object is. So I would recommend that you create a variable name that is describing what that object is doing. So in this case, what we created a scanner object that is called keyboard. And what it does for us, it reads some input from the keyboard. This system.in specifies that we want to get input from within the system, basically. And that just means that we want to get input from the keyboard. Now, this is how we create a random object. Again, how I can tell that this is a random object because of these two words, random, it starts with a capital R, which tells me that the class name is random. Now, this is our name of our object, rand. Again, it can be anything. In this case, it's rand. And this just says that we are creating a rand object from a class called random that's going to perform some sort of action for us. And this is how we create a print writer class too. So again, print writer, see, it starts with a capital letter, which means it's the name of the class. And this object output file, what it's going to do for us is going to open a file called numbers.txt, and then it's going to read some sort of data from that file. Let's see. This is the class that we're going to write today. It's going to be called a rectangle class. We're going to write some fields for it. We're going to write some methods for it. But before that, I want to go step by step with you what this means, and then I'm going to show you how to create it in Java. So first of all, when we want to create a class, we want to think about what our object will need from that class. So if we are creating a rectangle object, we know that our rectangle needs length and it needs width. So two fields, length and width, basically two variables, length and width. That's what our object will have. Then after that, we need to create methods that we will use on those variables. So as I told you before, if you remember, just a little recap, we usually create our variables that belong to an object with a access specifier of private. And what that means is nobody else outside of our class will be able to access those variables, because we do not want some program to access those variables randomly or make a mistake and access those variables randomly and change them when we don't want them to be changed. So this access specifier private will let us be able to manually set those variables and manually retrieve those variables whenever we need them, and not just randomly, not just by mistake. So it's very important that you specify that your variables are private so nobody else can access them. Again, these will be all of our methods that we will create, set lengths that will set our variable lengths to a certain number. The same with set widths. It will set our width variable to a certain number. Get lengths, get widths. This will just let us retrieve those variables without changing them. And get area is going to be another method that will return the area of our rectangle. So it's just going to calculate the area for us. Now, this is a UML diagram. You will probably see them once you get into the workforce. You will see the UML diagrams pretty regularly. These will just specify what the class is, what the class name is, which variables that class has, and which methods that class has. This is how they go. The first field is going to be your class name. The second field will be your fields or variables, and the third will be your methods. This is an example of how our UML diagram will look like for the class that we will be writing later on in this lecture. So again, the name right here, rectangle. Then these are the variables that our class will have, length and width. And these are all of the methods that we will have in this class. All right, now let's look at my compiler right here. So all right, so before we start, I want to mention that you will need two files generally whenever you want to create a class and then an instance of the class, because remember how we can only have one main method in our file. That's why we want to separate those two, just so it's easier to navigate your program. So I will show you how to do that. The only thing that you need to be mindful of is that your name, see right here, these are my two files, in class Java rectangle.java. They need to have the same names as the name of your class. So let's begin with creating our actual rectangle class. We're going to start by creating a class, public class rectangle. Again, remember that everything will be within the curly braces, so don't forget about those. Everything needs to be within them. Now, we want to create two variables, right? Length and width. How do we do that? We need to specify the access specifier, either private or public. And as we agreed, we're going to have it private. So private double, because we want it to be double, which is any decimal point number. Double length, right? That's our first one. And our second one will be the same, just with a different name for width. Let me fix a typo. Okay, so now we are done with our variables. These two variables will belong to every single object of this class called rectangle that you will create. After that, we want to specify our methods. So the first methods that I like to write personally is the setters. There's a informal name, setters and getters. So the setters, what they will do, they will set these variables to a certain number. As you can see right here, for now, they do not have any number assigned to them, right? They're just empty. We do not have anything like 5.0, right? We don't have that because we want each of our objects to be able to set those values accordingly to what that object needs. So we don't want to set a certain number for all of the objects. We want the objects to be able to set them separately. To do that, we need to create setters. To create a setter is just a method. It's just a method that's going to set your variable to a certain number. So in this case, we need to create a public method because we want this method to be accessed by anything outside of this class. Public, then we need to specify the return type. Remember the return types? String, integer, double, boolean, or void. So in this case, since we are not returning anything back to our program, we will put void. Now, after that, we need to create a name for our method. And in this case, we're going to create set length. And then inside of the parentheses, what we need to do, we need to specify what we are passing to the method. In this case, what we will be passing is our actual number. So double, we need to specify the data type, which is double. And then this can be anything. This is just a variable name to be easier, for it to be easier, I just put L because it's going to stand for length. Again, where we need to put our curly braces. And then we need to do just this one simple assignment statement, length equals L. So what that's going to do, you're going to pass some number right here in this, within these parentheses, and then that number will be assigned to this variable right here. Again, we need to do the same thing for our width. So we're just going to follow the same example, set width, double V. And then again, what we're going to do, width equals W. So this method does absolutely the same thing as this method right here. Instead of setting the number to the length, we're going to set the number to the width variable. Okay, so we're done with our setters. So now whenever we create an object, we can actually assign some value, some sort of data to these two variables. However, we also need to be able to retrieve those variables whenever we need them. To do that, we need getters. Because the getter, that's where it comes from. Setters will set some sort of value and getters will get some sort of value for you. Now to create a getter, it's a little bit different because you're actually going to be returning something to your program. So in this case, instead of typing void, we're going to type the actual data type of our variable. In this case, it's double right here. See, double, it matches. And then after that, we need to just create a name. In this case, I want it to be get length. And these parentheses are going to be empty because we're not sending any value to this method. We're just going to retrieve some value from this method instead of sending some value to it. So what we need to do, remember how it works with the value returning methods. We need the return statement. And what we're going to return our variable called length. And we need to do the same thing for our width method. It's going to work the same way, public double get width, and instead of returning length, we're going to return width. Okay, so now we're done with all of these. The only other thing that we need to do, we need to create our get area method. Again, it's going to work the same way. Whenever you're creating methods, just think about what that method will be doing for you. So in this case, get area. We know that we will be calculating some area within that method. We know by the name get area, we know it's a getter, so it's going to return some sort of value for us. So that tells me that what I need to do is create a value returning method. Again, get area. Now, there are two different ways on how you can create this method. You can either pass two values, such as widths and lengths, to this method and then calculate it, or you can just leave it blank and you can just do width multiplied by length. This will be calculated. This will calculate the area for you. And what you need to do, you just need to return it back to your program. All right, so now we're done with our actual class. To do that, I will compile this code. No mistakes. We're good to go. Here is, I created a new file. So this is a new file. And then here we will actually, oh, actually, my bad, sorry. I forgot about one thing. One other thing in the rectangle class that we need to do, we need to set a constructor. Constructor is something new, something that you have never seen before in Python or in PLD 101. Constructor is a basic method that will create every single object that you are making with a, just think of it as default values. So if you want to create every single object with default values, you want to create a constructor. Constructor is very simple to create. All you need to do is just type public and then type the name of your class. This means that this is a constructor. See that is different. It looks different from every other method. It does not have any return type. And inside of these inside of this method, you can either specify certain values, such as, for example, if we want our widths to be 5 and we want our lengths to be, let's say, 7. This way, every single object that you will create will have these values automatically, 5 and 7. All right, let's save it again. And now let's go back here. Now we want to create our main method, our actual main method where everything will be happening. So in this case, I already named my class in class, so I want it to be the same. I want it to match with my name of the class, name of the file. And then we need to create our main method. Again, main method is just one statement, public static void main string args. Again, we will focus on what each one of these things mean just a little bit later, not today. For now, you just need to know that this is what you need to type. You can just memorize it or you can write it down somewhere. This is what you need to write when you are creating a main method. Now, after this, what we need to do, we need to look back and see which methods we have right here. So we have length, width, we have the rectangle constructor, we have all of these methods. However, firstly, we need to create an object. To create an object, again, what you're going to do, you're going to type the name of your class, rectangle, see these two match. Then you need to create a variable. In this case, let's create a variable called box because we will be creating a box, or you can just say rect, you can say square if you're creating a square, but let's call it box. Then we need our keyword new, remember about that new. And then again, you're gonna say rectangle again and put the parentheses. So now, oh, this is an error, rectangle. All right, rectangle. So this statement right here will create an object for us. Let's see, no mistake. So everything's good so far. Now let's see which variables are assigned to our object by default. Again, this is just a simple print statement. And inside of that print statement, I will put box. Again, how to use those methods. You will put the name of your variable, box. Then you will put a period. and then you will put whatever method you want to use. In this case, I want to see which variables are assigned, so I want to retrieve some values, which means that I'm going to use getters. Get width, and in this case, we're going to say box.get length. All right, now let's see what this one will do for us. See, and it automatically printed 5 and 7. Now, where did those values come from? Let's look right here. We use these two methods, get length and get width. So we returned length and we returned width. And where do we set those values? Right here in our constructor. Width is 5, length is 7. Now, if you do not want to, you do not want your object to have default values, you can write another constructor. This constructor will let you set your variables to a certain value whenever you're creating your object. All you need to do is just do this. You need to pass 2 values into your constructor, and then what you need to do this. Length will equal to the L, and width will equal to W. So what this will do for us, let's look at, okay, this needs to go up. All right, right here. Okay, we saved it. Now we have our rectangle. This object will be just created with default values. Let's create a second object. Let's call it box1 equals new. Rectangle is again the same way. We're creating it the same way. However, now we can actually specify which values we want our object to have. Let's say it's going to equal to 10 and it's going to equal to 12. So I will be setting our lengths to 10 and our widths to 12. Let's do the same thing right here, but let's print both values. Let's print values for our box1 and for our regular box. Okay, let's see. Let's make sure we can specify box length. Oh no, that's width. Box width. And right here we will say box length. And right here, we will do the same thing, but we will put box1 width. And right here, we will say box1 length. So we can just differentiate the two and see which values belong to which object. All right, so look what we have. We have our box1, our object number 1 will have the width of 5. Our box object length will be 7. And then the one that we created as the second object, box1, will have the width of 12 and the length of 10. All right, so everything's not too hard so far.
Yeah, it's
All right.
cool. It's all right. So, but the only thing I struggled with was the file stuff.
Oh, the file stuff. Okay,
Yeah.
we can talk about it after this lecture if you want. Okay. So now we've created our two objects. They both have their own values. We know how to retrieve those values, but let's say we want to change, for example, for our box length for this object right here, for the first object, we want to change the value. For example, we do not want the box width to be 5. We want the box width to be, I don't know, let's say 8 or something like that. So to do that, all that you have to do, you just need to type, not here, right here, you need to type box set width, because remember we have that method, set width to 8. So this method right here will set our value to 8 instead of 5. And let's type this again to see if it works. So we'll say the new box width is, and let's say if it actually updated. All right, let's run it. See right here. So the new box width is 8. So we started with 5, our default, but then we wanted to update it. We updated it to 8. So now the new box width is 8. So this is how you use getters and setters. All right, let's get rid of this. Let's say, I'll show you the last one is the get area. So we will calculate the area and actually useful method, right? Because it will calculate something for us automatically. Let's say we want to print something. We want to print our area. We want to see what our area is. Again, print new line box area is plus box dot get area. So this is all that you need to do. And we will write the same thing. Let's write the same thing, calculate the area of our second object too. Box 1, this box 1 area is, and these two numbers should be different. Box 1 get area. Because again, as I said, we have two different objects, so they should work differently. Okay, now look at the two last rows. So box area is 35. 5 multiplied by 7 is 35, so it calculated the area for us. And box 1 area is 120. So these two are different because widths and lengths for each objects are different. So this one is 12 and 10, that's why we got 120. And this one is 5 and 7, that's why we got 35. You can also store these values somewhere. Right now, we are just printing them. They're not stored anywhere. But if you want to save them somewhere, you can do that. For example, let's say box area. Again, we need to create our variable. Usually you create your variables at the top. So let's create some variables. Public double box 1. Let's say box area. That's the first one that we create. And let's say public double box 1 area. So we are just creating a couple of variables where we can store our area. Now to store it, all you need to do is just type your variable name, put an equal sign, and then type this same method that is right here, but you need to assign it to a variable. So get area. And then for the second one, it's the same thing, box 1 area equals box 1 dot get area. All right, so if we run this, you will not see anything. Oh, wait, we have an error. Ah, yeah, you don't put access specifiers. Okay, you only put access specifiers whenever you're creating a class, so not within the main method. So double box area, double box 1 area. Again, you will not see anything because we are not printing these values. We are just storing them. To print these values, all that you need to do is just type a print statement and put box area. Let's do it like this so we can differentiate where they come from. Print ln box 1 area. Okay. See these values right now, they're just right here. They're just existing because we print them. But this way we are printing the variables. So we know that these values are stored within our program. Because we created an assignment statement and we assigned whatever value is being passed back to our program, we assigned it to a certain variable, and now we can just use these variables whenever we want them, whenever we want to use them. If, for example, you want to see what the double area is of your box, you can just put double, let's print double area of box. And then we can just do 2 multiplied by box area. I think you need to put parentheses right here real quick. Let's see if this will work. See, double area of box. equals 70. And I know this might seem like it doesn't really, it's not really useful for us, but it's important to figure out how these methods works, so how these methods work on a simpler classes and simpler objects, so then you can use them within your more powerful programs. So what's the importance and why I'm showing you all of this is I need you to know that there is a constructor within your class, that there's a setter and a getter for your variables, that your variables should be private and your methods should be public. Again, I will show you right here. See, our variables are private and our methods are public. So yeah, so you can create the fact that you can create two different constructors. You can create a constructor that will assign certain values for you, and you can create a default constructor that will give the same values to every single object you create. And the fact that you can also create your custom methods that will perform some sort of action for you. So this is just the point of the lecture. I hope it wasn't too much. I hope I didn't go too fast. Okay, let me stop recording.